Billiken fans, welcome back. It's Zach Miller and Peter Hale. It's the Midtown Madness Podcast. Before we get going, thank you so much for listening. If you're watching at home on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. It's season 4 of the Midtown Madness Podcast. And once again, we're brought to you by Two Men in a Garden. Pete, I went to the store today, one of the rare times I go when I'm not going to grocery shop. And I looked up at the salsa. I had to stop in and check to make sure that they still had it there. And I hadn't grabbed it in a while. I grabbed me some hot, and I'm ready to dig into it once we finish up recording here. It's kind of been a treat. I didn't finish the race, but it's a kind of a treat for an accomplishment, I guess. So I'm excited to dig into that Two Men in a Garden salsa for the first time in quite a while. And that's why they are a sponsor of the show, because I love it, because Peter loves it, because it's flat out great salsa. It's local. It tastes amazing, and they've got all the flavors to suit your individual salsa preferences. You can pick up their many products at any local grocery store or online at twomeninagarden.com. Which, if you're particular about your salsa, that's where you want to go, because, like Deerberg's won't have the cantina style hot. They'll only have the hot. So definitely head over to Two Men in a Garden, get it straight from the source. Follow them on social media at Two Men Salsa on Instagram and Twitter. Pete, a lot to talk about on this show, including a very special Arch Baron Cup Round 2 preview with none other than Eric Pitlyk, also known as the Arch Baron Cup historian.
That's right, the real Arch Baron Cup historian, and I think everybody's going to love our conversation with him. But Zach, before we get to all the good stuff that we have in store for everybody this week, it sounds like you did a pretty unique event over the weekend, and I don't understand it at all. So why don't you explain it to me on the mic so that I can walk away with some knowledge of this thing?
Sure. So I did it's called a backyard ultra marathon. So anything over 26.2 miles is an ultra marathon. With a backyard ultra, there's like 100-mile races, there's 100Ks, there's 50Ks. With a backyard ultra, there's no set distance. You run the race until the last person's standing. The race consists of a 4.2-mile loop that you must complete every hour. So you have to run 4.2 miles within the hour, and then make the next hour whistle, or you're eliminated. So the idea is you can do it one of two ways. You can run it a little bit harder and maximize like your time sitting down, because you get the time to yourself after you finish that 4.2-mile loop, waiting for the next hour. I ran it way too fast. And it's funny because way too fast is really slow. Like, we're talking, the guys that win this are carrying, everything on them, and they are running it at a truly snail's pace, and they're finishing with about 50 minutes or 5 minutes left to go in the round, 10 minutes left to go, at just enough time to maybe change the bottles, change a shirt, change shorts, anything like that, and get back out. I did 10 loops, which comes out to 42 miles. My goal was 50. I missed it. But fun fact, Peter, as of about, I don't know, let's see, as of 2 hours ago, they were still going.
So as we record, this is like Sunday evening.
Yes,
they're still going. Okay.
This event started on Friday morning at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
They are still running. They have not been to sleep. They have just been moving in that circle, in that loop all around Queenie Park. Wow. Since Friday at 10 a.m. They're on loop. They were on loop 58, 238 miles.
It's incredible.
Now it's more of a hike walk. it's real, like, it's not a, like, when you think of running, it's not a running race. It is very much a kind of plod along, walk up the hills, walk down the hills. That was the strategy I saw. I was kind of moving a little faster than most, but you're allowed to have like a pit crew of 2 people. It's during the day, so you got to find someone that you can ask to take off work
Yeah.
to help out. So, but there, I thought I overpacked, I underpacked and underprepared. It was crazy. I mean, I don't know how they're still out there, but
So will
I,
you
I
do?
can I can say that I didn't win because I had to do this. I
Right.
would have gone that long, but I had to record the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I remember texting you like, get off the course now. Come on, like
Yes.
get on these notes.
Yes. I actually just showered and no. Yeah, it's the race photos are gonna be up before the race ends.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So is this something you will do again? Will you try this again? Try and get that 50?
I mean, like, that's the funny thing, because I think it would be, it's not really that difficult. I don't think, like, it's a difficult pursuit. These guys are insane, but just by sheer fact of going slower, I think I would 100% get 50. I would do it again. It's just a matter of whether you want to stay outside for 12 to 24 hours. It's not so much the actual covering the distance. That's the hard part. You just get tired of being outside. Like, I want to do something else. Go sit down. Go, anything. There's not many things that I would do for 24 hours straight without stopping. So yeah, it was good fun. It was good fun. And my knees are still feeling it a little bit. I slept like a baby Friday night. Woke up every 3 hours and cried myself back to sleep. So that was a good time. You know what else is good? A good time. UMass leaving the A10.
Yeah, this was okay. So we've known for a while that UMass was looking at options, right? Because they've got a football program, and I believe it wasn't it independent, one of the few remaining independents in the FBS level of college football. Prior to this announcement, I guess they still will be for another season. But on Monday, the 26th, Nicole Auerbach tweeted out this news, and I think she was the one to break it. So this is the move that gets UConn into a conference for football, and they chose the MAC, Zach, which is kind of an odd fit for UMass, for a lot of reasons. But it was, I think, a big surprise to a lot of A10 fans, even those that kind of follow things closely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get it. Well, I do get it because hockey doesn't factor into the equation. And really, I don't know if there's another conference that would be a fit football wise for UMass.
I think a lot of people thought it would be Conference USA, but we've talked about Conference USA before, you and I have, and because SLU used to be there, and there are 0 remaining members of Conference USA today who were in it back when SLU was in it, right? I mean, like, we were in it with, the top half of the teams who moved on to the ACC and the Big East and places like that, and then the bottom half that stayed there for a while and then eventually moved on to the American. But Conference USA today is I don't think it's what UMass would want. They would probably want something more like the American. And if the American wasn't going to invite them, you look at Conference USA and it's got Sam Houston, Louisiana Tech, Western Kentucky, Liberty, Middle Tennessee, UTEP, New Mexico State. I mean, now you're getting out in the opposite corner of the country from UMass. Florida International, Jacksonville State. So that would be an even harder fit for what I don't think is in any better league football wise. So maybe I'm a little biased towards the MAC as somebody who lives in Ohio, and I kind of have a soft spot for a couple of these schools. UMass is 400 miles east of Buffalo, which is the easternmost member of the MAC. The only one that's in New York, the only one that's in a northeastern state. So it is an odd fit geographically, but we've seen a lot of conference moves over the past few years, and geography doesn't really seem to matter a whole lot anymore. That said, I don't think getting from Western Massachusetts to places like DeKalb, Illinois, Muncie, Indiana, Athens, Ohio, Mount Pleasant, Michigan. I don't think that's a lot of fun. And I do feel bad for the kind of hundreds of athletes, not just from UMass, but those having to go the other way, who are going to make those trips instead of kind of the easier bus trips that UMass was making up in the Northeast typically. So I think that kind of gets overlooked, but football rules everything, right?
Yeah, and I think we've seen this before, and it's odd that they kind of went against the cautionary tales. You talk about a program like Temple, we saw that firsthand.
Yeah. Yeah, chasing football is definitely risky. I mean, big conference football is the future. I think everybody kind of knows that. I think that's the 800-pound gorilla that's swallowing everything around it. But you mentioned Temple. I would add UConn and other Northeastern schools. You could even say the ones in power conferences like Boston College and Syracuse. It feels like they really haven't improved their athletic programs by getting themselves into what they thought was the strongest football conference at the time, and their programs really haven't gotten any better. And with the exception of UConn, you look at Temple, and it almost feels like the whole athletic program has kind of been drained as they pursue football. And Temple and UMass, I mean, like to put this in perspective, they have been some of the worst high level or this level football teams in the country. I mean, like really, really bad programs. And there's no reason that UMass can't be better and can't be more competitive in a place like the MAC. But when I look at sort of the optimistic projections of what they might do, I still think like the MAC's going to be lucky to get one team into an expanded playoff in any given year, right? So everybody's shot at this thing is going to be so fleeting and so rare, and it's going to take like a 13-0 kind of season or something, which is really hard to do out of the MAC in any given year. So I think UMass fans will be lucky to see a football playoff appearance in their lifetime. I'm not really sure what kind of upside they see here. At least the way that things stand now, I fully acknowledge that the NCAA and college sports are shifting rapidly, but it's yeah, we'll see if that works out for them because I think what they're trying to do is just kind of get in front of whatever these big changes are going to be. And it just looks like football is swallowing everything in its path. The Max
Is
a better. Go ahead.
well, is there a way to look at this that says it's about school pride and kind of uh because I think I've said it a lot where I don't think SLU should ever bring back football. I think it's a mistake financially. But as far as like tradition and shit, like does it do more to build a community?
You could argue that, but it's we know as well as anyone, it takes a long time to build culture and to build full broad-based community support, even within the university community for a thing. There are a lot of teams out there in FBS, not I'm not talking about FCS or any lower divisions of football all the way down. I'm talking about the highest level of college football, which is like 120 something teams, right? Your power conferences, and then there's about 60 more outside the power conferences as well that compete at that level, ostensibly, for the same prize, even though they never really get a shot. Even teams that go undefeated are not going to really get a fair shot in the current system. But um, I guess my point is there are a lot of those teams that are not filling their stadiums and that are really struggling. And UMass will get an initial bump of excitement over this, but that they're already facing a lot of challenges in building a competitive, sustainable program. Just being in the Northeast alone is a big disadvantage. And then you've got a number of disadvantages on top of that. Maybe the UMass community, this is all they've ever wanted, and they're ready for football. But I don't know, man. It seems like a real uphill battle to me. And I hope it works out for them because like the talk we see among UMass fans is that they're just going to go to the MAC and dominate basketball, but I don't think it's really going to work like that. You're going to be recruiting at a MAC level. You're going to be playing MAC teams. They've given themselves some challenges in that regard. It's not like they're just going to carry over they haven't even been a top team in the A10 in a long time. So I just don't see why they're going to go dominate another conference like they think they will. But speaking of the A10, I think it's really weird, right? Like when I think of the A10, UMass is such it's like an archetypical program, right? Like it's like what you think of when you think
Don't
A10.
say it. Don't say it.
I mean,
They are not the flagship.
I know like whatever they say. I don't care about their whole flagship thing, but it's like UMass is kind of an A10 member to the core. Now with them leaving, GW and Duquesne are the only two founding members of this conference. 1976, the only two founding members that are still in it. You look at the others: Villanova, Rutgers, Penn State, Pitt, West Virginia. They've all gone on to bigger and better things. I'm not sure that that's what's happening with UMass here. Generously it's a lateral move, but it's really a move down in everything else except football. And even if the MAC is more of a fit, because the MAC is all state schools, it's all big state schools, right? And there's only I think two other state schools in the A10 in Rhode Island and VCU. So maybe more of an institutional fit, but geographical, cultural, everything else, it's a very weird move.
Do you find it ironic that a conference founded on the 200th anniversary of our country, the first shot of a revolution, was fired by the Minutemen in 2024? Do you find that ironic?
I had not thought of it in those terms, Zach, but I think I probably should have all along. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's a
I
good
thought that
point.
was obvious.
But let's circle back to the A10. It's so obvious. If you're the A10 now, what do you do? What do you do if you're the league?
Nothing.
Yeah.
I don't. No, I don't. Like, bye. See ya, UMass. I
Mhm.
mean, if a school the only way you add a school is if they all of a sudden, like, if a Belmont has an NIL stockpile and they just decide they're gonna take a run at, that's when you grab somebody. You take, but they have to be a cultural fit, and I think they have to be a geographical fit. And my idea of a geographical fit would be nowhere east of Nashville, Tennessee. Like, you look at,
You mean no matter where west of Nashville?
no,
Oh, so you want more
yes,
western. Okay,
yes.
I see what you're
Well,
saying.
you look at the A10, and regardless of how bad the Billikens are this year, what three of the top four, programs that really take basketball seriously in this conference
Mhm.
are Dayton, Loyola, and St. Louis.
Your three westernmost teams.
Yes, and if your three westernmost teams are your most kind of serious programs, I think you try to get programs closer to them. I see. I don't know. I see no reason to add another team out of the Northeast, as you mentioned before, where you just have a ton of disadvantages.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there.
Maybe the
I
Southeast.
I think before like I'm even thinking about where to go. I think like the A10 just doesn't need 15 members, right? It's an
No,
odd, bulky number. And if they really do want to replace UMass, the new school has to be a program that makes the conference stronger and not just a replacement for the sake of a replacement, right? And if you're using this to grow from 14 to 16, the same rule applies. Like it's got to make it stronger. I look at UMass like I look at a lot of other A10 schools, and that they had a period where they were one of like a really, really good program, and in their case, one of the best in the country, but they just weren't able to sustain it. They're in the NCAA tournament every year from 92 to 98. You got three Sweet 16s and Elite Eight twice, one Final Four in there. So they're a powerhouse of the 90s, but like since then, one NCAA tournament appearance, right? And I think back to like George Washington had like one or two lost teams in a couple of years in the earlier part of the 2000s. You had St. Joe's, that incredible 2004 team that was undefeated all the way into the Elite Eight with Jameer Nelson and Delonte West. There are so many examples of teams up and down this conference, even going farther back, LaSalle being a powerhouse in the 50s and 60s and things like that. The A10 is a conference full of programs that have had really strong periods in their histories, but just haven't been able to sustain it. And so I don't want to see the league overreact to this departure, right?
Yeah.
I think West Pine Bills actually summed it up really well. They said this is not the death of the A10. The simple fact is that the good programs, Dayton and VCU, aren't legitimate contenders for an invitation to a higher conference right now. UMass had a unique situation with FBS football, and that's all this is. Nothing more, nothing less. So like I think that's spot on. I don't want to see the league like just go grab somebody just because they want to get to 15, which we already said was
Yeah, this is SLU bringing in Loyola to be the 14th team, and UMass leaving because they don't want to play anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and Loyola's been a great addition. Like they're in year 2 now. They're really good in basketball, and like their other sports have been really solid. So I think it's been you get Chicago market. It's been a great addition to the conference. So absolutely, that's been a stronger one, and not like George Mason and some others have been a little more questionable. But yeah, Loyola, VCU, I think Davidson too have all been great additions. So we've already said you don't need to add anybody, but if you do, who would you add, Zach?
Belmont.
Because like Belmont would be yours. Okay.
Oh,
Charleston and Wichita State are the other two that seem to come up the most. And then we've heard people mention schools like Drake, Murray State, Vermont, Colgate. I've heard a couple other oddball suggestions.
I could mess with Drake. Again, west of Nashville.
West of Nashville. So yeah, Belmont being in Nashville, Wichita State's pretty far out there. Even from St. Louis, that's like
I don't like
that's
I
a
don't
hike.
like that at all.
Yeah, and so I actually did look into Charleston because it seems like there's the most I don't know how legit it is, but there seems to be the most rumbling about them as a candidate. I do not see it with their basketball history or anything. Like they have a good coach and a good program right now. They won 30 games last year, but like that is not a very strong program if you look at their history at all. They're just not. So I don't think that's a program that makes you stronger, especially if the current coach leaves, right? I mean, like, you invite George Mason after a Final Four run and their coach leaves, and the program has obviously not been back to that status ever since then. I just don't want to like chase like whatever's the hot flavor right now just to grow for growth's sake.
No,
I think we're fine at 14.
I mean, I think you could look at I think someone mentioned St. Thomas the other day.
St. Thomas is intriguing just because I mean they were like a lowered, what were they, D3
Yeah,
powerhouse.
they're pouring money into.
Yeah, and that's right. So they're building themselves into the kind of program that's going to be, and they're like a small to medium sized private school. They're in a major market in Minneapolis, St. Paul. They're it's a nice program. But again, that I don't think they're going anywhere right now. So
I mean, Hofstra would be in that type of program. Obviously, you mentioned Charleston. I don't know, maybe Butler or Creighton.
those we'll get Butler on the come down.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know. I don't care really what happens. High Point was one that was kind of off the radar, but interesting.
That's a school that throws a ton of money at their facilities and everything, but they don't have a whole lot to show for it in terms of actual success. I saw somebody mention Liberty too in the same way, and I know
Oral Roberts.
Or
should we just keep going?
Yeah, I mean, like Yeah, Liberty's its own thing, and I don't no, I would not want that. And they're another one though, by the way, that they're chasing football, so that wouldn't even make sense.
Um, no, I mean, like, if you look at the map, like, I would, if you could find me one in, like I said, Oral Roberts, Oklahoma, um, Indiana, again, Butler was that Indiana connection, Drake's in Iowa, uh, Kansas, I'd love to just get to have another trip. Kentucky, we can find some in Kentucky. What's Berea doing? They want to come up to Division One.
Yeah.
I just want a place that we can drive to.
Yeah.
Pete, we have talked about a lot that isn't actually Billiken basketball on the court, and we just have to address one more thing adjacent to Billiken basketball, and
Hmm.
that's our baby boy Jordan Goodwin signed a two-way deal with the Memphis Grizzlies, and that's
Hmm.
big news.
It is because he'd previously been signed to a 10-day contract after being traded by the Suns to the Nets. The Nets waived him. So the Grizzlies actually released another A10 alum, Jacob Gilyard from Richmond, in order to make the signing for Goodwin. Two-way players can play a maximum of 50 games in a season, and Gilyard was almost there. So instead of converting him to a standard deal and cutting someone else, they let him go. So he'll receive his full two-way deal salary, which doesn't count against the salary cap. The Grizzlies have a full 15-man roster now, which goes up to 18 players with those two-way slots included. So after not playing for a couple weeks, Goodwin actually played 30 or more minutes in the past three games. Unfortunately, all of those were losses. He's not shooting it great, but he's kind of doing that Jordan Goodwin thing and filling out the stat sheet in other ways. I think he had 8 assists in 2 of those games. So he's definitely making his presence felt. We know what he can do defensively. We know how he rebounds, and we knew he was just going to keep getting a shot, right? Like when the Suns let him go, you just knew that wasn't going to be it. Or I'm sorry, I guess when the Nets did because he was traded to the Nets. So yeah, you knew that wasn't going to be it. He's too good to just kind of let go. There's too many teams that can kind of use what he does. And if his shot comes around again, I think he's going to make himself indispensable for them down the stretch.
I don't really understand how the NBA transactions work. I don't get it. Roster moves. I don't
Yeah,
understand it.
it's complicated. Some people love that though.
Yeah, it's like the league that everybody goes to for the drama.
Hmm.
Um, George Churchich is out for the season with a foot injury. Happened during the Richmond game. He's gonna need surgery. The bingo card's almost full. The coverall is almost complete here.
This one hurts because he's a guy we've been kind of screaming all year to give him more of an opportunity because he's got such a smooth shot and he does some nice things, Zach. So it's a shame that finally once he does get a little more run, this happens, but it happened in a Richmond game that was another loss, an 80-64 loss at home on Wednesday, the 28th. And we talked about going into this game, Zach, that Richmond was going to carve up SLU's defense. Now, it took a while, but they eventually did that, right? Like they went 20 for 29 from the field in the second half. But I got to give SLU some credit because they were really solid on the defensive end in the first half, I thought. They did leave Jordan King too open too many times, and he's got unlimited range and a green light. But SLU kind of held tight. They held close for a while in this one, and it just kind of grew and grew in the second half. And yeah, not only lost the game, but lost our guy Churchage.
Yeah, I think it's interesting this Richmond game because what we've seen from the Billikens this entire season is defense of the absolute lowest order,
Yes.
where you're going to score on a straight line drive time and time again. So going into this game, I almost wondered whether Richmond would overcomplicate things with their offense. Whereas with this Billiken team, you really don't. I mean, look at what's happened as far as scorers against us. It's always like one dude who goes off.
Yeah.
And that I think is where this Richmond team is different than previous teams that Mooney has had, where Jordan King can really make things happen when that Richmond offense really does slow down.
Yeah.
So I wondered if Richmond would overcomplicate it with their offense. They didn't really need to run that beautiful offense they run. And sure as hell, it was slow to start. And then, Jordan King kind of took over, and that's it. That's all she wrote. 27 points.
Yeah, 27. We said he could score 30, so we we were pretty close, but it's not a slew problem with him, right? Like he's got that kind of shot
Oh yeah.
making ability. He had 27 again a few nights later when they played VCU. And so he's just a really unique player. And right now, the way that their fortunes are changing, the kind of conference player of the year conversation has very much gone from all along, oh, it's Holmes, right? To being like, I don't know, Jordan King is actually putting up huge scoring numbers lately. And by the way, they're going to be the team that seals up first place if this week goes as expected. So he's really developed into an amazing player. And in their offense, kind of that old school Princeton offense that's just like cut, 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 and they bring Quinn out to the high post and he passes from there, and there's always going to be somebody open eventually, and normally it's him, and he can just make those circus shots. So that's not necessarily a slew problem, and we saw a few nights later that giving up 27, um, it's not embarrassing necessarily. He went 7 for 9 from three, and then he hit that one that was like a complete circus shot. Medley had him guarded really well, and he beat the shot clock with it, and you just kind of felt like, well, if he's making that, what can you do?
That really did seem to be the hinge point in that game, where it went
Yeah.
from the Billikens are hanging around to
Yeah.
you
Just
saw
not
that
our
go
night.
down. It was over.
Yeah. It really was. I mean, I mentioned Quinn, he's the 7-footer. He led them in assists. He's been leading them on in the season, but he had 7 in this game. He just pops out to the elbow. He finds a cutter. He scored 14 and had 6 rebounds, and all 5 Richmond starters were in double figures here. Really balanced attack once you get past King.
Yeah, man, it's tough to really go through these games. I mean, Richmond was just I think they torched us especially in that second half. Neil Quinn was great. I love the way they run that offense.
19 assists on 31 field goals, and you wind up with a slash line for Richmond of 517, 579 from three, good lord, and 778 from the free throw line. They really they don't care if they burn some shot clock, as they kind of patiently wait on the best thing to open up. But you can tell it's a senior laden starting lineup, and even though they haven't all played together the whole time, they're really patient, smart. They play well together. Slew, meanwhile, Zach scored, or they shot under 38% from the field. They were 35% from three, which is fine, and 79% from the line, which is good. But yeah, not their best day shooting it. Although I do want to highlight a few milestones in this game that were pretty cool to see. Gibson Jimerson is now Slew's all-time leader in three-pointers. He hit his 296th in this game to claim the record from Erwin Claggett. What do you think, Zach? Being a fifth-year player, does he get an asterisk?
Have we checked with Cheryl Swoops?
Does he get an asterisk anyway for being a fifth-year player, though?
I don't know. I'm more worried about like the Pistol Pete, Caitlin Clark thing, because that's just too different. You can't have one single scoring record for like men and women's basketball. You can't. It's a different style of play. Like I'm not saying the skill level is different. I'm saying strictly the style of scoring and play is different. If Pistol Pete went and broke Caitlin Clark's record, are we saying, oh yeah, sorry, Caitlin Clark, Pistol Pete's taking your record now?
I guess we would. I don't
I
know. I
don't
mean,
think I
it seems like there are a lot of things that are kind of baked up for fan engagement and for arguing and things like that. And I'm just kind of like, well, why can't we just enjoy the thing in the moment?
Oh yeah,
And
no, you can absolutely say Caitlin Clark is great at basketball and one of the
yeah,
greatest of all time. I just don't give a shit whether or not she scored more points than Pistol Pete Maravich. I give a shit that she scored more points than Cheryl Swoops.
I mean, I think once you score a certain amount of points, inevitably they're just going to look at that number and compare it to anything else.
Anyway,
But Jimerson is now the not just the leader in three pointers. He passed Highmark, who was doing the color commentary on this game, for fifth in all time scoring, and his 21 points put him at 1706 for his career. I personally don't put any asterisk by his name because I think if you take his first season, which was really just 9 games, he got hurt early in that 10th game and missed the rest of the year, and then combine it with the next season that was shortened because of COVID, you have about one full season there, right? Because that gets you 31 games, and 31 games is a season anymore. So by the time he finishes this season, he's really only played the equivalent of 4 full seasons. So I think all the people who want to, put a footnote by his record, I think they're a little wrong-headed in the case of Jimerson, personally. But we do have another fifth-year player to highlight here. Terrence Hargrove passed the 1,000-point mark for his career. He had 9 points and 5 rebounds, and kind of quietly, kind of like DeVal Roby, another 1,000-point scorer, has just kind of quietly put together a really nice career here.
fun fact, somebody on Billikens.com, let me pull it up. You mentioned DeVal Roby. Let's see. It was WGSTL on Billikens.com. Tim Dalger and DeVal Roby are teammates now.
Yes, I saw that. Pretty interesting.
I mean, you've got to kind of connect the dots that like somebody helped somebody get on that team.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, no, it was great. Speaking of Scott Highmark doing color commentary, I am so glad the Bally Sports broadcasts are over.
Yeah, Dat struggled. She didn't really get much better over the course of her 5 games this season where she did play by play. I was rooting for her to be good at it. I always want us to have good coverage, but it just doesn't seem like it's her thing anyway.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm not gonna go down the road of ranting on Alexa Dat.
Well, rant on this, Zach, because I'll just say, okay, so Ezewiro had 17 and 11, good game for him. Hughes finished with 11 despite going 1 of 8 from 3. But where I want you to rant, or at least ask the question, where were the students in this game? Like it seems like we had the smallest student section of the season, and it wasn't like a break or anything.
Yeah, it was really weird, and I don't recall them ever really GAing the student section for a non-break game.
Is that what they did? I mean, was it general admission in the back of that section?
Yeah, I mean, no, I was in the front of the section. I mean, I've seen kids in the student section before, like on a break, but again, I've never seen just like on a random, it was what, a weekend game? No, weeknight game.
Yeah, this was a weeknight game, but nonetheless, I mean, it's still.
I mean, there was maybe 3 guys down there, three people, human beings.
Midterms is like the best I could think of. Maybe it was midterms.
An Orgo test in a month.
Yeah. Regardless, I mean, that's I don't know. It just seems kind of weak to me that no one's there. Very weird.
I mean, I don't know. I didn't show up.
Yeah.
So if I'm not going to show up, I mean,
it was no, midterms are this week.
Well, they were studying.
I guess they're studying. I think I could have found a little time.
Pete, let's go ahead and get into this this win at Rhode Island.
Yeah.
I want to start by This is interesting. So there's two things I want to start with. First of all, Steph Van Bussel. I loved everything about his performance except for like one thing he did.
We'll foul out.
Oh man, sure. No, I think he messed up. He turned it over or something, or is I don't know.
The one thing that stands out to me is he fouled a 3-point shooter
That's yep,
for an and one
yeah,
on a 3-point shot. Did
yeah,
he make? I think he made the shot too. But anyway, he
yes,
fouled the 3-point jump shooter in the first half, and that kind of drove me crazy. But no, I thought overall he was really solid in this game.
yeah. It really is like it shows so much how poor our interior defense is, where just having a freshman who's coming off a rod being put in his leg is our best defensive option at the 5.
He's not only our best defensive option, he's our best rebounder, and I don't think that's particularly close. Like rebounds per minute, or per 40 minutes or whatever you want to call it. He's way better than not just Bruce, but Brad too. I mean, like by far, I think he had 10 overall rebounds in this game. And then he had those two of them were offensive rebounds that were putbacks late, and they were crucial, right? Like coming off of contested layups that rimmed out, he put two of them back in a row. And so it's not just his rebounding ability, it's not just his rim protection that really was much appreciated, but his awareness in clutch moments in the game, to not only keep SLU in it, but kind of put us over the edge there in the last minute or last few minutes, before he fouled out. He was really great in this game.
Yeah. The next thing I want to talk about is Sincere Parker. Um, he made a surprise appearance. He can't like
Yeah,
this is vintage Travis Ford.
I know, playing the roster like Bill Belichick, the injury report. But we had been told, I mean, I guess Stu or somebody like a day earlier said it looked like we weren't going to have Parker for this game. And then all of a sudden, an hour before tip off, he tweets that Parker is going to be available. And so, sure enough, he plays. He looked good. He looked like himself. He had 16 and kind of looked like he might be working up close to 30, but then he left with an injury. And the injury, Zach, I mean, I guess it's a dislocated shoulder. If I'm
I never understand the difference between separation and
Yeah,
a
dislocation.
dislocation.
So it was one of these where somebody's driving into the lane. He was up by the free throw line and just leaned over and reached in, and they caught his arm awkwardly. And it was kind of just the ultimate like, move your feet, not your arms on this situation. So, it's a little. I don't think anybody deserves to get injured for making a bad defensive play, but hopefully that point is underlined to him. You know, as he's recovering from this, and hopefully he's back soon. Hopefully, with that kind of injury, they can just kind of pop it in and let it heal.
Jimerson was outstanding, albeit against a team that does not play any defense. 30 points on 8 of 18, shooting 4 of 8 from the field, 10 of 12 from the line in 39 minutes. Again, like there's a level of talent against which Gibson Jimerson can absolutely dominate a game. Unfortunately, that level is low, but again, he's a very, very good player when he's a piece of a team that operates at a normal level.
Yeah, he's been the focal point of our offense for a couple seasons, and we've watched him draw the toughest assignments. And against better teams, they don't give him any room at all. And they'll chase him around, they'll tug on his jersey, they'll do whatever they need to do to keep him from having any room. But we've run into a couple teams lately, Zach, like Rhode Island and George Washington, that are really up here in terms of poor defense. And SLU, as we know, cannot guard anybody right now, but it's alarming to run into other teams that defend as poorly as we do. And I certainly think Rhode Island is one of those, but I'm glad he made them pay. He was really good in this game.
Shoes did okay.
Mhm.
He understood the assignment, except that he was in major foul trouble in this one.
He did get in some foul trouble. I think he wound up not fouling out, but it did limit his minutes. But overall, a good game. 17 points. He shot pretty well from everywhere. Medley was another one though who struggled with foul trouble. He had 5 assists. He had some really nice plays for his teammates, but he did foul out with no points in the stat sheet.
Thames, like the dude just makes huge plays or goes invisible.
Yeah. Yeah, he does kind of have stretches where he kind of disappears, but he makes these big plays, you know. He had 10 and 5 in 28 minutes and he stayed out of foul trouble. So like overall you're like, okay, good, but obviously everybody has some work to do on the defensive end, but um I just want to see more consistency, right? You see these big putbacks, you see these coast to coast layups, you see the occasional block. I mean, he does some things that raise your eyebrows and you're like, whoa, okay, where's that been? And then he kind of quiets down for a few minutes. So it's really just about putting a good, you know, 40 minutes or however many minutes he's going to get out of that, stringing that together into a consistent performance.
Rhode Island had a chance to tie this game. They had the ball with 7 seconds left, down three. The Billikens didn't foul. I think we know where I stand on fouling. Green got a really good look on this one. It was short. Do you think they were planning to foul and just didn't, or do you think they just let them?
I need to watch it again, but the way that I remember this going is like we kind of looked like we were trying to get in front of him and maybe foul, you know? Like I think the key here is they inbound with 7 seconds, right? You don't want to foul too soon and stretch this game out to be a couple more possessions. You want to foul when it gets under 5 seconds. And he moved well enough with the ball to kind of like he made it down sort of the far side from the camera, the far side of the court, the left side, I guess, the way he was facing, and then cut in a little bit to give himself a shot, kind of at the upper part of the perimeter, like middle to sides, not fully out on the wing, but gave himself a clean open look and just completely shorted it. And I could tell when he let go of the ball, like he completely shorted it. It wasn't a great shot, but he did have a good look. So Slew got lucky there that didn't quite shoot it in rhythm. He made an awkward motion and didn't release it the right way. But um, I think they have to, as soon as he crossed half court there, I think they should have hacked him.
The question was posed in the notes here. Was this actually a fun game? And I would say no, but it has nothing to do with the 8 bullet points that we have below that. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why this game sucked. Because I had to listen to Pete Gillen repeat himself on a loop
Yeah,
for an hour and a half.
when I hear guys like him, it's kind of amazing to me that he was the head coach at like Xavier, and other schools. It just kind of it's incredible to me because he just sounds like a goofy old man at this point who leans on these little expressions and whatever notes he's been handed before the game. And yeah, man, I don't know.
They did the same like you had trouble finding the stream before it switched over to TV. I am not exaggerating when I tell you that they did the exact same spiel about each coach twice.
So yeah, so I did miss the beginning of this because I was trying to pull it up on my TV. You sent me a link that worked, but I was
Yeah.
trying to pull it up on the app on my, Roku on my
Yeah.
TV. And if you went to the game that was going long, which was Towson UNC Wilmington, it pulled up that game. And then if you went to the other game, like they had a separate window that you could click on for SLU and Rhode Island. Click on that, and as it's loading, it says, live from Kingston, Rhode Island, the Ryan Center. And then the game pops up and it was UNC Wilmington Towson. So that was on at least two different and I didn't, the other things to click on were other games and other sports. And so it didn't make sense. So I think it wasn't just like the CBS Sports Network, but it was their app that was messed up too. But I guess you could find a link on the website. But regardless, yeah, that they messed that up, and that was really frustrating. But I guess I didn't miss out on any good commentary. But to circle back to the question, Zach, 12 ties and 18 lead changes. Both teams scored over 50 in the second half. SLU shot over 50% from both the field and from three, over 80% from the free throw line. Both teams shot over 50% for the game. SLU only turned it over 5 times and outscored Rhode Island 27-5 in points off turnovers. Yes, the Bills were getting punished on the glass, especially early in the game, but we talked about Steph's presence helping out there, and second chance points were, only by 1 in Rhode Island's favor. SLU had 6 blocks, 6 steals, both of those more than we normally see. And no, they don't still play defense, but um, that's better than a low scoring team, right? That loses most games. Like, you'd rather have a high scoring team that loses most games than a low scoring team. And yeah, I don't love the fact that Rhode Island outscored their season average by 18, but I don't know. I was into this one a lot more than I've been into any other game recently.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I had just woken up from a nap.
I didn't do an ultra marathon this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I was into it. I guess I was enjoying the back and forth. It's just so hard when you listen. Like, the announcers just, like, I get the local, it's bad. I get the national, it's worse. I don't know. I can't do, I can't, emotionally speaking, I'm exhausted.
I understand.
Um, you know what helps when I'm feeling down, Pete?
I think I do, Zach. I think I do, and it would be salsa generally.
Yes,
You
yes,
not you not being a pickle guy. It's got to be the
correct,
salsa.
correct.
Uh, but I do want to highlight a different product of theirs this week, because in my last order, they squeezed in a little jar of, and I've got to get the name of it right here. It's called the Fallout. It's an all natural, sugar-free spice blend. That's it's the same people who do that sriracha granada, and really good stuff. It's like kind of a green chili spice blend. They recommend putting it in like on fish or chicken, or put it in dips, like make us like a sour cream or Greek yogurt based dip out of it. It's really good. Kind of has a little bit of like a green chili, garlic, sweet, salty, spicy. It's got a little bit of all of the above. It's really versatile. I like it quite a bit. I've used it a few times now, and I recommend it. It's no matter what you're trying to stuff in a box and get shipped to you, it'll fit in there. It's a little 5-ounce spice jar, but man, oh man, is it good. So head over to 2minutegarden.com. I don't know where you would be able to find this one in grocery stores, so you're better off getting this one right off their website. And it's called the Fallout, and it's the sugar-free spice blend from their friends over at Sriracha Granada.
Yes, go get every 2 Minute a Garden product. Tell them the Midtown Madness podcast sent you. No, you'll get nothing for doing that except the satisfaction of knowing that you made us feel good about ourselves. Yeah, we love 2 Men and a Garden. Pete, let's go around the A10, and then we get to the main event of this podcast, the interview with Eric Pitlyk. Tuesday the 27th, UMass 69, George Washington 57, Dayton 80, Davidson 66, Ford Ham 61, George Mason 60. It was 19-8 at halftime. Mason led by 14 in the second half. Kyle Rose hits a 3 with under 4 seconds left to win it. I mean, has anyone done a wellness check on Petey Buckets?
Yeah, I think he made it through this one, but man, oh man, I think that's a just a horrible result for for George Mason. No matter how you slice that, it's terrible.
Bonaventure gets a 78-64 win over Loyola. Mark Schmidt's 300th win snapped a 7-game winning streak for Loyola. Don't worry. If you are wearing maroon and yellow, things will get better. Wednesday, the 28th, VCU 88, Rhode Island 67, Duquesne 75, LaSalle 63. Pete, tell us about Friday 10 and the closing of Tom Gola Arena.
Friday 10 on the March 1st was the main event of the week. And like you said, our friends in maroon and gold were happy again because they beat Dayton 77-72 at home. Looked like a great atmosphere. It was a pretty great game too. And a nice result for the Blurs. On Saturday the
Pete,
2nd.
hold on. I need your take on this one because I made my take well known.
Mhm.
It's only fair that how do you feel about that Dayton fan in the student section? Is that weak ass bullshit or what?
It's weak, but it's one of those things like, I don't know if like my wife is a lifelong Xavier fan who went to SLU, right? She would never do that. But if she were that obnoxious, friendless Dayton fan that we saw in that student section,
That's worse than anything I say in this interview.
Like what is to stop someone, from doing that, right? Like if she's just a Dayton goober who goes to Loyola, like what can you do?
I think kindly move to the very back of the student section in the corner where it almost looks like you're not in the student section.
I mean, she clearly wanted everybody to know she was there.
Yes. So you move them.
So you move her.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know what their, if their student sections are like assigned seats or what, but like, it's clear that if they try to do anything to that girl, there was going to be an incident.
Well, we know they're not assigned seats. We had to listen to them yell in the background of the broadcast. If they wanted to get rid of that, they could have just moved those people.
Except he said they're there every game. It's the same girls who we were hearing on the broadcast. He said we're in that front.
Yeah, they should assign them somewhere else.
Yes.
No,
I don't.
But I didn't hear it during the national broadcast.
No, we didn't. On Saturday the 2nd, after that lovely game, St. Joe's 82, Fordham 69,
nice.
LaSalle 72, George Washington 66 in the final game at Tom Gola Arena. We will miss it dearly before they rotate the court 90 degrees and give it a fresh paint job and some new seats.
Pour one out for the dead homies.
Tom Gola, RIP. Duquesne 59, George Mason 51. Bad week for the Patriots. UMass 69, Davidson 67. Good result for the Minutemen the week that they announced they're leaving. It was. And then Richmond in the Battle of the City of Richmond beats VCU 79-76 at home to wrap up the week that was in A10 basketball.
Let's look ahead, Pete. And we are going to kick over this show to an interview with the real Arch Baron Cup historian, Eric Pitlyk, right now. Billiken fans, it's the final installment of the Arch Baron Cup for the 23-24 season, barring any wild Atlantic 10 shenanigans. And because it's a very special rivalry, it is a fierce rivalry. Some might call it a chaotic rivalry. We need to bring in an agent of chaos to talk with us about this rivalry. And he is a member of the first family of Billiken basketball managers. He is one half of the Pitlyk brothers. Is the younger Pitlyk. Some might say the more handsome Pitlyk. I don't think I agree.
I agree. I do agree with that. I do agree.
Some people said it. I didn't say that. I didn't say it. But it's Eric Pitlyk. You might know him better as the real. Let's make sure we get that straight. The real Arch Baron Cup historian, Eric. Welcome to the Midtown Madness Podcast, buddy.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Pete. I really appreciate being here and coming on.
Noted tailgate organizer too.
That too, yes. Admittedly, we've been not great about the tailgates this year.
I can't imagine why.
There are several factors that play into that. Yes, the quality of the play being one. But number two, there are like no weekend games in the A10 this year for SLU. They're at home. So like they were all on Tuesdays and Sundays or something ridiculous. So we weren't able to do as many as we could have, but we got a couple in. And by us, it means me and my brother and no one else showed up. So, but we had a good time. We had drinks. They'll definitely be a thing moving forward for sure. So it's sort of a spring training for us for Battlehawk season. So we get a chance to break out some of the tailgate gear earlier on in the year.
We don't talk about the Battlehawks on this show. We're Billikens all the way here, but whatever you need to do to train for that frivolous sideshow. But we understand you have a history with the Arch Baron Cup as a former manager. What was your first experience with the Cup as someone who's on the bench with SLU?
I do. So when I was a manager there, I went there twice, once as a freshman and once as a junior. My freshman year, there's a bit of a backstory to all of that went on. So about a month prior to that game, the Rams ended up leaving St. Louis. And if you know anything about the Pitlyk family, we were always at those games, season ticket holders, huge fans. They leave. We're heartbroken, right? It's this whole big deal. So putting that aside, we're going into that Dayton game. And we had won a couple of games. This was Jim Cruz's last season. So us winning a couple of games is like, oh, man, we're feeling pretty good right now relative to the way the rest of the season has gone. So we end up getting into that game. And nowadays, historians refer to it as the palindrome game because the final score was 73-37.
Oh!
It did not go well. It was not a great game. So,
I was there.
At one point in the second half, I am behind the bench. I'm filling up water bottles. And, it's just kind of one of those games where you're just waiting for the final whistle to go off. And if you guys have ever been to UD Arena, the crowd gets crazy regardless of who they're playing. The student section gets rowdy too. And at one point, at around, I want to say it was probably maybe like 6 minutes left in the game, the UD student section starts chanting, LA Rams, LA Rams, LA Rams. And half of the bench, all like walk-ons, managers, JB, and Shork, who was our strength and conditioning coach, even some of the rotation guys, they all turned around and looked at me to see what I would do to what was going on in front of me. I took a deep breath. I just sat down at the bench, and Jonathan Birch whispered into my ear, Eric, I'm really glad that you didn't do anything because the last thing that we need right now is a newspaper headline that reads, SLU manager charges Dayton student section in pummeling of SLU. So that was my first ever foray into the Arch Baron Cup as a manager. Obviously, with my family being what they are, we've hated Dayton since the day I was born. So that being said, that's kind of my introduction into it from a managerial standpoint.
So we've had in the past, I know I've talked with Sully and his former, I guess, business partner. I don't even know the guy who originally kind of the old Blackburn Review, Blackburn
Review, yes.
The old keeper of the records. Some would call him the illegitimate keeper of the records.
They got most of it right.
So did they have it right on the origin of the Arch Baron Cup as a matchup between St. Louis and Dayton?
So they got the background story as it relates to Dudley Lockwood and Frederick Harewood and all that stuff that happened a century ago, or even more so at this point accurate. But truthfully, the first ever quote unquote Arch Baron Cup, the cup hadn't been a thing quite yet, but
Kind of like
they
the
attributed
AFC NFC championship.
yes, they attribute it to the NIT matchup that happened March 11th. I think it was 1951. But the first ever meeting between the two teams actually happened 3 years prior in football. So this was back when SLU actually had a football team. They played each other at Dayton. Dayton won 41-0. And there were multiple fights in the parking lot after the game. There were some questions about the officiating crew and whether or not they had placed bets on Dayton. It was a whole thing. And that honestly really precipitated into the rest of the history of the rivalry on the basketball court, because the next time they played each other wasn't, 2.5 years later, but there were still feelings on both sides, with high levels of animosity amongst each other.
So, in your kind of expert opinion as the historian on this game, how much do you think that SLU dropping football led to kind of the unrest among the fans? So you look at a game like football where they beat the hell out of each other for 4 quarters, right?
Yes.
You get that angst out on the field. Now, switch it to basketball. It's a little bit more of a finesse game, especially back then. They were still shooting underhanded. How much do you think that the lack of testosterone, getting that testosterone out on the field led to more of that fan confrontation?
That's a good question, Zach. I'm not really sure, because Dayton has had a football program between then and now. They still do. So I'm not sure that necessarily falls into that category. I think it really just, it all kind of starts with the first couple of games that got played. And I don't know what it is, Zach, to be perfectly honest with you. It's just every time these two teams play each other, it either leads to multiple arrests in international.
I've been there.
Or some other crazy stuff, or former players chirping current coaches. Something always happens at the Arch Baron Cup, and it's one of the reasons why it's the greatest rivalry in college basketball.
I believe we were sitting close to each other during that infamous,
the great, yes, the Djordje Jet and Anthony Grant foray.
Simultaneously, one of the toughest days of my life, but also one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen happen in a sporting event.
It was incredible. Oh, I was going nuts, Zach, when I saw it. It was amazing.
It's a testament to how far we've come as a culture here in St. Louis and in Dayton, that didn't lead to full-scale riots.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think I think it kind of spooked most of the A10, Bernadette in particular, because we were so close to having another legendary moment in the Arch Baron Cup. It is probably the reason why we're playing both games on Tuesday nights nowadays.
Yes,
as opposed to weekends.
I'm shocked that they didn't put them at 6 p.m.
It was insane. I felt bad because I always want those games on weekends. We usually have them on Friday nights, but now they're both on Tuesday this year, which people will still show up. It will still be the Arch Baron Cup. They can do whatever they want to try and prevent any shenanigans, or as the Europeans call it, hooliganism. But it's going to be a part of it. It's always going to be there. And I think I'm especially looking forward to this Tuesday. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen, Zach? It's the Arch Baron Cup. This kind of stuff always happens.
It always is a part of it. And that's why we want to know, like, what's the typical, like, kind of police or security response or preparation, both in Dayton and in St. Louis around this game, and how has that evolved over the years?
So nowadays, it's almost a formality that the National Guard is involved with security at both arenas, both the Ohio and Missouri, depending on where the game is played. Uh, in prior years, there were political issues that led to such measures not being taken.
Well, I was wondering how that would affect the situation at the border.
Well,
With the National Guard being up here for that, I just want to make sure.
Well, I think the Missouri National Guard has its own separate
Fair play.
Arch Baron Cup personnel. They're specifically
Dayton
this
can't
event.
afford it. Dayton can't afford that.
Yeah, so historically, there have been more arrests made in Ohio as opposed to Missouri because of that. But that being said, yes, that is usually the MO. Historically, that hasn't been the case, and historically, you've gotten fights in bathrooms, riots out in the streets. In particular, after the Sean Hahn game, even though Dayton won, they ended up accidentally lighting two buildings on fire. Nobody was hurt, thankfully, but it was such a shock that they ended up winning that game that they partied a little too hard. They partied Detroit style up there. So,
I'm wondering, what is it going to take for the mainstream media to finally acknowledge these atrocities that these violent Dayton fans are perpetrating?
I am of the belief, Zach, that the national media intentionally tries to hide this rivalry as much as it can because it is so contentious, because it is so dramatic, and because whenever there has been a spotlight on the game, there has been several instances of outright antics that they do everything in their power to hide acts on both ends of this rivalry. Dayton is not necessarily complicit. I would not be doing my job as a historian if I didn't say otherwise. But I think there is a concerted effort on a national stage to try and prevent as much collateral damage as possible by not showcasing this game. Because if they did, they gave it its true light, we would be talking about, national uprisings and it would break households. It would break families across the country. Some families are split down the middle. I know a couple of them. It's crazy.
Now, a question for the fans that may be nervous about going to Chaifetz Arena on Tuesday night because of, the atmosphere, the red, the versus blue. What should they choose a side and wear red or blue, or wear those neutral gang colors?
Wear blue. Just wear blue. Just wear blue. Strength in numbers. Just wear strength in numbers, then it won't be a problem.
Don't start no shit, won't be no shit.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, got it. Got it.
That would be my recommendation.
As a historian, I think you probably have a better perspective on this, but I want to circle back to that Djordje Anthony Grant incident a couple of years ago. And obviously there were very heated responses to that in the moment from each fan base. And it was kind of a Rorschach test in terms of pretty much biased, depending on what team you root for. But setting all of that aside, how has this incident played out in the historical record since then? And is there like sort of a definitive account of maybe who was at fault or what actually happened there?
So, I have actually, I have had a couple of conversations with Jordair actually about it. You know, from his standpoint, I mean, he was on the baseline, and Molly Smith was just there in front of him. You know, he makes that gesture, and that was pretty much it. Um, I've never talked to Anthony Grant about what happened, but my impression is that he thought a bigger deal was being made out of it than it actually was.
Hmm.
Like he thought somebody was trying to approach one of his players, and that's what got him heated. In the accurate accounting of what actually happened is my guess. I have not talked to him though personally about it, so who knows? Maybe he has always targeted Jordair Jet because of his success as a player within the Arch Baron Cup and felt he needed to make a point. But that remains to be seen. I will have to do some more digging. Unfortunately, I do not have the access to Anthony Grant that I do to Jordair or anybody else within the Billiken, uh, um, the list of characters that are a part of the Arch Baron Cup on the Billiken side of things.
Can you tell us more about the Arch Baron Cup as it pertains to being a physical object? I picture it more, some people talk about it like it's a red solo cup. Some people talk about it like it's the Harry Potter Goblet of Fire type statue. What does the Arch Baron Cup look like for the uninitiated?
So it's a difficult question to answer, Zach, because the cup changes every year.
Mm.
So it's never one trophy. What happens is, at the end of every season, the trophy gets shipped to a melting facility out in Dayton, Ohio, where they'll melt down the trophy.
That seems that I don't know if I like the Arch Baron Cup or the materials that make the Arch Baron Cup to be handled in Dayton.
It gets created. All those materials get transferred back to St. Louis, where then it gets recreated.
See, I'm
So-
impatient. I'm impatient.
So there is a shared process with this. As far as what the trophy actually looks like, it ultimately depends upon the student sections of both schools. So the Lunatics and the Red Scare end up collaborating on what the trophy is going to be that year.
Have there been children placed inside the cup as Lord Stanley's has?
Not to my knowledge, although who knows, maybe that happens this year. We'll see. But
I mean, not many college. Not
there
many.
aren't- yeah, there's
we
not
haven't had
a lot of-
we haven't had a dad on the roster in a while.
It's been a while. I cannot say
I
with
think it's
100%
Dwayne
certainty
Polk.
whether or not a child has been in the cup.
I think it would have been Tommy Liddell,
Jake Forrester.
Jake Forrester.
Yeah.
Hot damn.
Oh,
Well
Yeah.
done.
well, I'll do some digging on that, Zach, and
All
I'll
right.
try and get back to you.
All right.
So once it has been processed, in Dayton and then in St. Louis, how does it go about getting to where it will ultimately stay for the season or, between seasons based on who's won the last matchup?
Well, the process of the actual smelting and recreating of the cup only takes a matter of about a week, historically speaking. Whoever won the cup last is the one who gets to hold it. So right now it is sitting in the trophy room at UD Arena. It's not accessible to the public for fear of vandalism, because they know people like me or Zach will go up there and try and steal it.
I accept that.
But when come Tuesday, they will transport it down for the game. And if SLU wins, they will hold on to it. If Dayton wins, they bring it back with them. And that has historically been the case for each of these games, as was the case in Dayton, where they held the cup. If SLU had won that game, the players would have been allowed to take it with them on their flight back to St. Louis.
there's a lot of talk from the red sweater vest wearing pieces of shit about how
Those
you know,
heathens.
yeah, about how Jalen Crutcher it has had one of the best Arch Baron Cup performances in history, but I know there has to be a guy that wore blue that had a better performance. Tell me there has been.
There have been several, Zach. First of all, going back to probably the most dominant run that Slew's had with the Arch Baron Cup was during the Spoonhauer era. Erwin Claggett had a couple of brilliant performances in his time at Slew. I know for a fact Dwayne Evans had a couple of strong performances. He's actually the last Billiken to win the Harewood Horse Award at UD Arena. And that happened back in 2011. So it has happened before. Admittedly, it's been a while. I think, to be honest with you, I think DJ Foreman might be up there too. I know he's got a Harewood Horse Award back when they won at Slew. To be honest with you, like Jalen Crutcher, what did he finish that game with? What was it, like 14 points or something like that? He just had a shot that we're not going to talk about.
Didn't happen.
It didn't happen. It didn't happen. It was a false flag deep state operation. Slew actually won the game. So it was just to keep Dayton in the running for a 1 seed. That was all.
Dayton, where they major in gaslighting.
Yep. And besides, they didn't even make the tournament that year.
They
so
didn't.
What are we even talking about?
If you don't make the tournament, you're not worth anything.
Exactly.
How could they miss that tournament?
I don't know. I have no idea. All that talk about such a great team, and they don't even make it. So,
unbelievable.
Just hype every year.
All hype.
So I'm wondering, is there, we've talked about a few notable matchups already, but is there a game that's considered the greatest in the history of the Cup?
I want to give my opinion on this, actually, after the historian gives the facts.
Go for it, Zach.
No, you give the facts. I give my opinion.
Gosh, that's a good question. I think personally, I'll give you my favorite, which is us beating Dayton in Brooklyn in the A10 tournament in 2019.
Okay.
That, going back to that tournament run, that was the game that I think everybody in our locker room pretty much said, okay, yeah, we can do this. We can make this happen. Because that was probably our most complete game up to that point in the year. And, we were able to contain Jalen Crutcher and Obi Toppin. We had a complete game, and that gave us a ton of confidence going into the Davidson matchup. So personally, that's my bid for the greatest, for the best, my favorite Arch Baron Cup moment. As far as the best one,
I got 2 words for you. The shot.
The shots. Oh, yes. So you could probably, Dayton fans will definitely say it's Jalen Crutcher. Billiken fans will probably say it's Kwame Mitchell.
That shot is the greatest shot in Arch Baron Cup history.
That was insane. That was incredible.
That was that wasn't the game.
No, it was the
winner.
Game tying shot.
It was the game tying, and then it took it to overtime.
And I think, wasn't that the double overtime game? If I'm not mistaken, that's the only double overtime game in history.
I do not believe that game went to overtime or to double overtime. I do know that another one went to double overtime. That was my freshman year, and I think the final score was like 58-56. To give you any indication as to how that game went.
Well, the shot ended. The second half ended at 54-all.
Yeah. Sometimes rock fights break out at these games, man.
Oh man.
I was wrong too. There have been 2 double overtime games, and it looks like this has gone into overtime 10 different times.
Yep.
Yeah, wild. Okay.
This is the sickos rivalry. This is the sicko. Like I truly, in my world, this is North Carolina Duke. However, I appreciate the opinions of others, however wrong they might be, when they say Duke, North Carolina is Duke, North Carolina. I disagree with that. They, however, would call it the sickos, North Carolina.
It's the Arch Baron
And
Cup.
Duke.
I think that to
Yes.
me that speaks for itself.
It is it is a sicko rivalry.
It supersedes Tobacco Road. It supersedes the big game. It supersedes Yankees, Red Sox, Cardinals, Cubs, whoever else you want to put it up there with. No other rivalry has led to a military armory catching on fire and causing taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars. Adjusted for inflation, it goes up into the billions easily. That was a closed scrimmage that happened in the 70s that there is no record of. The game didn't even get played. Guys were fighting each other before the game even started.
It was like that scene in Mighty Ducks 3 where they play early in the morning.
Yes.
Yeah, it was exactly like that.
It was an armory in Indiana. They figured if they kept them away from both St. Louis and Ohio, it would lead to less animosity. It just made matters worse. The 2 players ended up getting into a fight, broke into the armory, and the taxpayers had to foot the bill for it. So Dayton and SLU did not play each other for another, I think it was 6 years after that incident.
Gotta let things cool down.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a new segment that I'd like to try out. It's presented by 2 Men in a Garden, of course. How many miles is there or are there between Chaifetz Arena and UD Arena? Eric, you guess first.
Oh, I've done that trip how many times? Let's see. It's about a 6-hour trip. I'm going to guess 380 miles.
Peter?
It's lower. Because from my house to Chaifetz would be like 350 something. Of course, Dayton's like an hour north of me, but I'll say like 360.
Ah, nice. It is 362.8 miles from Chaifetz Arena to University of Dayton. It is estimated at a 5-hour, 24-minute drive, which equates out to almost 3 games that you could, 3 vintage Arch Baron Cup games you could watch on the road between arenas.
The more you know.
I am usually starting shit on Twitter on my way up to the game, as opposed to watching games. Although I may give that a shot this year. Maybe I'll watch the 2011 game on my way up.
You're certainly not missing anything on the drive. It's one of the more boring drives you'll find.
It's brutal.
I watched a lot of. I think I watched like 3 seasons of How I Met Your Mother or something like that. There and back, driving up there.
This past year, I ended up taking a pit stop in Indianapolis. We've got a friend over there who, admittedly, is a Dayton fan. Who allowed us to stay at his place. I do appreciate him letting us stay there. Though for his safety, I will not disclose his name.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Yes.
I'm wondering, has the Arch Baron Cup, we've talked about how it doesn't necessarily get respect as being the premier rivalry in sports, but I'm wondering, how has it impacted the larger culture, like pop culture and things like that? It must have some influence.
So, it's funny. It's funny that you mentioned that. There are a couple of references to the Arch Baron Cup that people don't really recognize or acknowledge, but they're definitely there. First and foremost, Nelly's music video where he's wearing the St. Louis University jersey. That came immediately. He shot that immediately after an Arch Baron Cup. So that piece of lexicon is there. It has been alluded to in episode of Family Matters, as well as King of Queens of all shows for whatever reason. I was taken aback when I heard it too.
Is that where that meme came from?
That's
what he's talking about?
Came from. Yeah, they're just talking about the Arch Baron Cup.
Where were you at, honey? I don't know. Arch Baron Cup.
So, but admittedly, beyond that, there isn't a ton that are well documented. Again, simply because the national narrative, there are people with power who are incentivized to keep this rivalry quiet, or as quiet as they possibly can be, because it's so contentious.
I feel like a guy like Jay Billis,
he hates it.
Yeah,
he hates it.
It goes so strongly against his mainstream media narrative that the tobacco road, big tobacco is involved, guys.
He doesn't want any competition whatsoever.
Jay
with
Billis,
Tobacco Road.
Big Tobacco, CTESPN, they're all in cahoots to hold down the Arch Baron Cup.
Heaven forbid you knock Duke down a peg or two. Heaven forbid.
I mean, you saw what happened in 2009 when we had them on the schedule. We had Duke on the schedule, and to sabotage the Arch Baron Cup, they framed our players for an unbelievable the lengths that they will go.
It truly is absurd, and really the only thing that we can do about it, Zach, is beat on the drum as loud as we possibly can and get as many people paying attention to this rivalry, despite the lack of national media attention, for the sake of the rivalry. It's a truly special event. And I believe that it should be celebrated for all of its flaws and all of its pageantry. I think we should be celebrating this as one of the truly great rivalries in college basketball.
But before we let you go, and not say we're ready to let you go, but what is the shittiest town on the way inside Ohio on the way to Dayton?
Dayton. Does that count?
Yes, it does.
Dayton. My answer is Dayton. That place is awful.
It's horrendous. Horrendous.
We get gas in Indiana right at the border before we cross over into Ohio.
Is it
so
true?
that we don't pay their gas sales tax?
Is it true that you refuse to buy beer in Ohio as well? You won't even get concessions at the game. Is that true? So that's
that is not true. No, okay. Every man has its limits, Zach.
That's true.
But I buy Bud Light products without fail, to at least soften my resolve in that respect.
Get ready to learn Daytonese, bud.
Yeah. Sorry.
So,
but Hey, listen, if it means that I am more intimidating to Dayton players, then so be it. Because I do, it's we usually get pretty decent seats when we're over there. We like to uh be visible towards the Dayton student section. If it means they're focusing on us as opposed to the players, it's all the better. So
Yeah, I don't begrudge you needing some liquid courage in that arena because is it true that Dayton fans actually threatened to light your car on fire if we won in Dayton this year?
it is 100% accurate. Yes, that threat had been going for months prior to me actually going there.
Is it a Kia or a Hyundai?
It is a Ford Fusion.
Okay.
I don't know how they knew. They even knew my VIN number. So,
Wow.
They've taken it too far.
They're
They've taken it too far.
They're crazy. I will say this, though. I will say this. As somebody who has gone to Dayton for an Arch Baron Cup, I think if you're a Billiken fan, you should at least once go up there for a game.
Just not under Jim Cruz and
For what
I think that's
worth,
when I was up there last. That's the last one I went to.
I mean, the ones that I have been to have been under Jim Cruz and Travis Ford, but the atmosphere alone is impressive. I will give them credit. It is an amazing facility, and I would do anything for Chaffetz Arena to feel that way on a night to night basis. So I will give them that credit, but they also did threaten to light my car on fire. So
that's a problem.
Yeah, we've had weird run-ins with Dayton fans I go to the game every year. I think the only season I've ever missed since I've been living here in Cincinnati was the COVID year. Pretty sure that was the only one. But yeah, I have a weird run-in with a Dayton fan every single year. So I'm not surprised at all that they threatened you like that. And I'm glad you're here to tell the tale.
Yes. We're glad. We're happy that we were able to leave safely. That's always a big part of our thought process and the questions we ask ourselves when we go up there. But we have to go. We have to be there. We have to be there and witness the next victory at Dayton Arena. It's going to be right up there. It's going to be one of the greatest moments of my life to be able to witness that, to finally throw it in the face of the Red Scare. Nothing would make me happier. Nothing.
What goes into your outfit choice? What's going to go? Okay, we'll leave you with this question.
Okay.
2 questions, actually. We'll leave you with one and then add on another one at the end. What is going to go into your outfit choice for Tuesday evening?
We've talked about it. Last year we did the body morph suits. We may end up doing that. We've also talked about matching as Left Shark from the Katy Perry Super Bowl halftime show.
So you have all these costumes because it's Sunday, bro.
I don't have the Left Shark one. I think I want to leave the people guessing because it'll vary from time to time. This year it's going to be a bit of a game time decision, just because I have so many different options at this point that I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. But my guess is the body morph suit will be a part of what we wear. As far as our creative process in terms of what we wear on an annual basis, especially at Dayton, that usually begins about 3 months before the game actually takes place. Usually we come up with a theme at that point in time. This year we went with EDM rave, which is why you saw a bunch of reflector pants and shiny sleeveless hoodies and things like that. but the year before that, we just kind of slapped on some crazy ass stuff. We wore face paint and we just kind of showed up to the game. But it's really taken on a world of its own at this point. And now, I end up getting recommendations from people in terms of what we're doing next year. So
Billiken Juggalos.
I will keep that tucked away. We'll think about it.
That's a fun one. That's a fun one. Whoop whoop.
Jazzercise was something that was brought up earlier this year.
Okay.
So those leotards, we would just run all around Dayton Arena to wherever we went. If we needed to be in the concession stand, we would just run in place while we're wearing them. So that was our initial thought for next year, but we'll see what happens. We haven't made a decision one way or another on it, but they're excited about doing it again for sure.
All right, so you're the Arch Baron Cup historian. I'm gonna make you be the Arch Baron Cup fortune teller. What's gonna happen Tuesday night?
2 technical fouls.
Okay.
Over under 30.5 total fouls. I am going to say it's another overtime game.
Wow.
Yes. As much as it pains me to say it, I do think Dayton wins, but I think it's an overtime game. And I think Sincere's going to drop 30, and the final score is going to be somewhere in the triple digits for both teams.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that'll be fun to watch. If not,
it'll be a wildly entertaining game.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see what happens. That's my prediction. I'm gonna say 105-103.
Okay.
All right. Wow, that sounds like a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward to it.
Eric, this was a lot of fun. It was educational, no doubt.
I'm glad.
Yes, I hope everybody finds some educational value, because really at the end of the day, if you're not educated, you're just a Dayton fan. So thank you from I guess Billiken fans, listeners of this podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Go Billikens.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Beat Dayton.
Pete, what a great time that was, chatting with Eric Pitlyk. I cannot believe how much bloodshed has come of this rivalry and how much the mainstream media ignores it.
They really do, Zach. They really do. I mean, everybody's got their own agendas. ESPN's always had that ACC thing.
Jay Billis, Seth Davis,
right?
The Roy Williams, the Krzyzewskis. They're trying to keep the lowly Atlantic 10. They're Atlantic Coast Conference, not Atlantic 10. They're really protective of that Atlantic area.
They really are, and in the process, they're ignoring some historical and some really not just controversial, but influential. I mean, it's got political implications. It's got socioeconomic implications, as we saw. There's been some violence throughout the years, but someday they'll take notice, and this Arch Baron Cup will receive the recognition that it deserves.
Will the Billikens exercise any demons on Tuesday night?
I sure hope so. I don't think they're going to guard Dayton, but we saw kind of how
the only guarding will be the amount of National Guardsmen in attendance.
That's right, or at least surrounding the arena outside.
Yes, that's the only guarding that'll happen on Tuesday from people from Missouri.
When we played at Dayton earlier this season, a few weeks ago, we kind of saw how we were leading at halftime. If people remember that, so you kind of see how Dayton loses, and Dayton has not been playing well lately either. yes, Holmes got whatever he wanted against us, but if their shooters are not hitting, they really don't have guys who just like go get buckets, right? Like they don't have those. They don't have a crutcher. They don't have like an athletic wing who's just like going to go get you something. They have a lot of shooters who
Jordan
just
King.
yeah, they don't have a guy like that, right? Like they don't have a creator. They have guys who are set shooters out on the wing, and they're not super athletic. They play kind of slow. They're not like Sully was telling us, they don't foul a lot. And they don't make a lot of mistakes, but if they're off, it's always going to be a close game. And we've seen them lose a few lately. So you could definitely see where this isn't the worst matchup for SLU, but yeah, it's hard to imagine a team being cold for 40 minutes against us the way that SLU defends. So I think that's the problem.
Oh yeah. This game will be fun, I think.
Yeah.
St. Bonaventure preview. The Bonnies, I mean, is Mark Schmidt on the hot seat here or no? I don't know. The Bonnies are 18-10 overall, 9-7 in A10 play. It's an average year for the Bonnies. They they'll punch up once in a while and then they'll have some what the hell games.
Yeah, and Mark Schmidt seems to have unlimited goodwill with that fan base. Like he's in his 17th season now, and he's taken them to the tournament just 3 times. But yeah, for whatever reason, they really love him. I guess with this team, this particular iteration of Bonaventure, they're a good shooting team, but when they're off, they are really, really off. In 10 losses, they've averaged 61.8 points per game, and in 18 wins, they've averaged 80.9 points per game. So over 19 points a game difference between when they win and when they lose. It's a pretty big gap there. And it seems to have more to do with what they're doing than the opponent. They shoot well from three, over 37%. They're one of the better free throw shooting teams in the country. They're a solid defensive team. They only allow 67.5 points a game. Interior defense can be a little bit suspect beyond Chad Venning. They give up kind of a high percentage inside the arc, and they really don't put up good rebounding numbers, but part of that is tempo. They play relatively slow. They're looking to limit possessions. But Venning is really the main man on this team. He's 6'10", he's 280, he's a load inside. He averages 14.5 points a game, 5 rebounds, and 1.8 blocks. He's a junior, but the next 4 scorers down the roster are all seniors, and they're all about 6'3" or 6'4". You've got Micah Adams Woods, who scores 12.9 points a game. He's their point guard, averages 3.7 assists. You really don't want to leave him alone outside because he shoots 46%. Charles Pride is another one, shoots over 41% from three. You can't put either him or Adams Woods on the line. They both shoot in the mid 80s, but Pride's their number 3 guy. Moses Flowers, he scores a pretty efficient 9.5 points a game. Daryl Banks, on the other hand, scores a really inefficient 8.9 points a game, but he's a really good free throw shooter. So you can't put him on the line either. So the main question really is which St. Bonaventure is going to show up. They've lost to Duquesne, they've lost to Fordham, both at home, but they've also beaten Loyola there. They've beaten VCU twice. They're just kind of unpredictable. They'll have 8 days of rest before they play GW on, I believe, Wednesday. And then they're coming off solid back-to-back wins over UMass and Loyola. So they'll be rested, couple good results in hindsight, and it's just a matter of which team shows up to play us that night.
Do we really want to go through the A10 standings, Pete?
You don't, Zach, so let's just skip it.
Yeah. We're in second to last place behind Rhode Island and in front of George Washington.
Yeah.
Women's basketball had an interesting week. I don't think we're gonna review this. I don't know what we're gonna do here. A 78-57 win at LaSalle on Wednesday the 28th. LaSalle actually led in this one by 1 at the end of the first quarter, and the Billiken defense kicked it into high gear after that, holding the Explorers to 6 in the second quarter, going into half on a 14-0 run. The Explorers closed the gap a little in the third, but didn't get any closer than 8 the rest of the way. Julia Martinez had her second career triple-double off the bench, 10 points, 11 rebounds, 10 assists, 3 steals, and a block in 27 minutes. My word, Julia Martinez just stuffs the stat sheet. She is the women's basketball counter to Jordan Goodwin. I have no other comparison. Peyton Kennedy, 17-7. Tiara Simon, 16-12. Really, when she gets it going, the Billikens go along with it. McMakin had 16. LaSalle really didn't have any depth. Only one player got double-digit minutes off the bench, and she was 0 of 8 from the field. The Billikens had 29 bench points to their 7. LaSalle took 34 3-pointers and made only 8, which is a preposterous amount of free or 3-pointers to miss. The Billikens didn't shoot well either from outside. They went 4 of 18. LaSalle was just poor from everywhere. 318 was the lowest field goal percentage the Billikens have allowed this season. It was a clean game, fast game, went by quickly. The fouls were 11 and 9 the entire game. Streaky at time, but I mean, SLU really owned this game, Pete.
Yeah, they did. They just kind of beat LaSalle in every facet of it. They did a nice job on the glass. But they had an even easier win over Davidson this weekend, Zach. They won by forfeit on Saturday the 2nd because Davidson shut their season down. Basically, they've canceled several games lately due to non-COVID illness, which it's weird, but that's how they keep wording it in official releases. And so yeah, they announced that this game wouldn't be happening, and then they shut down the whole season shortly after the forfeit was announced. And I don't think it's actually illness. I think it's just injuries.
Yes.
Yeah, which is kind of an odd thing because the first was a game at Dayton on February 21st that they didn't go to, and then a home game against Fordham 3 nights later they didn't play. They actually did play the next game, which was their senior day against George Washington. They had 6 scholarship players and a walk-on, and then apparently they lost another player during that game, and they just decided to end the season rather than go to SLU. Do you think that they should be like? I saw people saying that they should face penalties for this or something.
Dude, I don't think so. I mean, this is just like, no, like, I don't know how you like, I don't know how you legislate this.
I agree with you. And I haven't seen anybody else in the league crying out for that. Right. I mean, like, I think if there were other teams like, hey, there's some chicanery or this is BS or whatever, but the other teams have just kind of been sympathetic and said, like, look, if you're down to 5 active scholarship players, like, just what can you do? Right.
Yeah. I mean, what's the rub here? Like, what do they avoid? Like, what's the game?
Yeah.
You lose. Like, it's not like they're on the bubble and they just don't want to play anyone in fear of losing.
Right.
Like, they're shutting it down. It's not, oh, hey, we got to cancel a few games until we get a player back. They literally don't have players.
Yeah. Yeah. They like it. They don't have anybody on the bench. I mean, this was a team too that started, I think, 12-1 or something like that. Like, they had a really, really strong start to the season. And I was trying to pull up their overall record, but my I don't know, my internet is not getting me there. I don't know if Davidson's website is down or something like that. But anyway, regardless, they had more to play for. They were kind of in the middle.
Their
of the
website
pack.
Is injured.
Their website does appear to be injured. I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, yeah, they had a lot to play for this season. I think they could have had up to like the 7 seed had they continued to play. So it's not like they were terrible by any stretch.
Yeah, no, that's tough. I mean, I think I have to bring up the year that the SLU women's basketball team had a rash of stress fractures due to team shoes. By the way, I miss team shoes.
Yeah, I kind of do too.
They replaced Davidson with Knox College. Pete, tell us about this one.
Yeah, so this was senior night, and so they wanted to get somebody in there to play rather than just kind of take the forfeit as a rest game, and they beat Knox 119-42, broke every record in the book on that one. But they honored Kyla McMakin, Julia Martinez, Camry Clegg, Bree Johns, Peyton Kennedy, Nafatumata Haidara, is that right? And
Idera, I think.
Haidara, student managers Taylor Hedrick and Maurice Miller Elder. So this was the last minute replacement for Davidson. The Prairie Fire, as they go by up in Knox, finished their season 19-8, lost in the second round of the Midwest Conference Tournament on Saturday, the 24th. So they probably thought their season was over, but they got a chance to play one more game. I think it was the first time in program history they played a D1 team. So it was kind of a big deal for them. Knox is up in Galesburg, Illinois. It's 3 hours due north of St. Louis. 3 hours because there really isn't a straight line to get there. But yeah, the game was a little closer than you'd expect after the first quarter. It was 28-17, but it really got out of hand after that. Julia Martinez, her second triple-double of the week, her third career triple-double, again off the bench, 15 points this time, 10 rebounds, 11 assists, 5 steals, 2 turnovers. Peyton Kennedy was excellent. She led SLU with 26 points, 11 of 18 shooting. She was 4 of 6 from outside and had 15 rebounds, so she did it all. Kyla McMakin had 24 on 9 of 19 shooting. 12 different Billikens got in the game. Everyone played 8 minutes or more. And SLU finished with 52% shooting, 39% from 3, 81 from the free throw line. Knox actually did shoot worse than LaSalle did against SLU. So this, 27% is clearly the worst on the year that we saw. Under 10% from 3, just 8.3%. And SLU out-rebounded them, Zach, 63-28, including 26 offensive boards. They had 64 points in the paint, 33 second chance points, 23 fast break points, 17 steals. They forced 24 turnovers, 32 points off turnovers. So 119 is actually an all-time high for points. 77 is the biggest margin of victory in program history. So you feel a little bit bad for Knox having to come in and suffer that kind of defeat, but very, very gamesman-like of them to do that. And I'm glad the game happened. By the way, that 119 broke the record that was set earlier this year, 109 out in Hawaii against Chaminade. So they've had some very, very big scoring performances against lower division teams this year.
Next up for the women, they'll head to the A10 tournament in Henrico, Virginia, March 6th through the 10th. SLU got the 7 seed, which is best case scenario, which was the best case scenario for the Bills heading into the weekend. They could have been anywhere from a 7 to a 9 with Davidson dropping out. That was really what you and I were questioning, what they were going to do with that Davidson forfeit, with Davidson dropping out. I mean, the Davidson forfeit gave them the win while Loyola and Fordham also lost. They faced the 10 seed George Washington, who finished 6-12 in conference and 13-17 overall. And in the only meeting between the two teams this season, SLU won 66-56 at the Smith Center on January 20th. McMakin and Kennedy did most of the scoring in that one with 21 and 20 points. Shavers had 12. Martinez had 9 assists. Different starting lineup than we've seen lately, however. GW had 0 bench points. They still don't go very deep. You'd hope SLU could take advantage of this. And the fact that George Washington really isn't very good. The winner will get VCU, who has had a fantastic season, including a 76-67 win on Education Day at Chaffetz over the Billikens. I don't love the draw. But
yeah, it's a challenging one, but I think it's better if you look at like the 8 or 9 winner has to play the 1 seed right away. I'm not sure the draw would have been better, right? If they had finished in another spot around where they were.
yeah, I mean this. I really do think this A10 is very, very good this year.
It is. The top is a lot stronger. I mean, Rhode Island was picked to win the league and they're still pretty good and they're the 6th seed, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like that's just one slot above SLU. The 1 to 4 are all really tough teams. We mentioned it last week. They just they're really taking care of business. all four of those teams have won 23 or more games. Three of them have won 25 games. Nobody's lost more than I think 3 conference games. They're just really solid teams, and it's no matter what your draw is, they're going to be hard to get through.
Baseball. Let's run through these. Well, let's talk about SIUE and then run through the Lemoyne series, because the Billikens set some records in this SIUE game, Pete.
They did. They hit a program record 7 home runs. Patrick Closey had 2. Ethan Sitzman, Graham Mastros, Austin Newegg, Drew Winters, and Tyler Fogarty each had 1 in this 13-8 win. 5 of them were solo shots. 2 were 2-run homers. Cole Smith actually drove in more runs than any of those home runs with a 3-run double in the second. Closey also finished with 3 RBIs, but he needed 2 home runs to get there. SLU was off to an 8-0 lead after the top of the third, but SIUE got 5 back in the bottom of the inning. And with SLU up 13-5, SIUE got 3 more back in the bottom of the ninth, but it just wasn't enough. SLU used 5 pitchers in this game. Dawson Smith got the win despite giving up 4 earned runs in the third. Owen Kelly finished that inning, and then Jack Weber and Josh Cunningham each pitched a couple innings of scoreless middle relief before Evan Gray came on. He finished the final 1 2/3 innings, giving up those last 3 runs, 2 of them earned. SLU moved to 8-0 with this win for the first time since 1966 when they started 9-0. But Zach, breaking that record or even tying it was just not meant to be. They had a 3-game series against Lemoyne this weekend. At SLU, Lemoyne is new to D1, and it's where we got Fred Pistello from. So I wonder if he stopped
send
by
him back
to say hi to the Dolphins.
The Dolphins are at they got moved. They're up by the new.
We brought him back in the form of the Lemoyne Dolphins.
Oh, not the Dolphin Pond. Okay.
I guess they have
Got
dolphins
it.
in upstate New York, right?
Yes, they swim in the Hudson. I guess.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, 3-game series. The first one was a 6-5 loss on Friday the 1st. Just college baseball, baby. College baseball.
Yeah.
SLU led 3-0 after the third and 5-3 after the sixth. Gave up 1 in the 8th and another 2 in the 9th to lose it. Evan Gray pitched the 9th and took the loss after giving up those last 2 runs. Tommy Ray started and struck out 6, giving up 3 runs in 4 2/3 innings. Jack Weber pitched 3 1/3, and allowed 1 run after striking out 7. Closey went 3 for 5, 2 RBIs and a run. Opened up the scoring with a 2-run single in the second. Ethan Sisman had the game's only home run, a solo shot in the 6th. Pete, they made up for it in a lot of ways the next 2 nights.
They did. They shut them out on Saturday the 2nd, and it's nice to see that they can win a low-scoring game, right? Where they're not where they're only scoring 4 runs instead of 14. It was a 4-0 shutout. Knox Preston singled Tyler Fogarty home in the second, and then Fogarty scored on an error in the 6th. And then he singled to send Patrick Closey home in the 8th. Preston hit another single with Graham Mastros also on base, and Fogarty crossed the plate for the 3rd time. Jackson Holm pitched a gem here. 8 strikeouts, 4 hits, and 8 innings. Jackson Yarberry closed it out with a 2-strikeout 9th. And then, Zach, the bats really came alive again on Sunday the 3rd.
Yeah, they did. 19-5 win Sunday the 3rd. As you mentioned, the bats were wide awake. Tied 1-1 after the first inning. Sioux scored 11 over the next 2 innings to put it out of reach. Lemoyne scored 4 in the top of the 5th, but SLU added 2 runs in the bottom of the inning and 4 more in the 7th to make it 19. Charlie Weber started and got the win despite 5 earned runs in 5 innings. He struck out 5 to match. Chaffin.
Like
Chaffin, Bollinger, and Bell. The law firm of Chaffin, Bollinger, and Bell combined for 4 innings of scoreless relief. Hayden Moore led the Bills with 4 RBIs, and Tyler Fogarty led them with 3 hits. Fogarty, Moore, Smith scored 3 runs apiece. Lemoyne had 5 errors and led to 5 unearned runs. Billikens host Western Illinois Leathernecks for a one-off on Tuesday in the midweek on the 5th, and then Loyola Marymount comes in for a weekend series the 8th through the 10th. Pete, let's get soft.
Softball was down at the Austin P tournament in Clarksville, Tennessee.
You said P.
Let's go P.
You
March
said P.
1st to 3rd. They won 11-2 in 6 innings over Indiana State on Friday the 1st. Indiana State actually got out to a 2-0 lead, but did not score again. SLU got 7 in the bottom of the second, starting with a Chloe Rhine solo shot. And then SLU's last 2 runs came on a 2-run homer from Kelsey Ettling. Ettling and Rhine led SLU with 3 RBIs apiece. 8 different Billikens scored. Taylor Hockman got the win. She's settling into a nice groove after that first inning and pitched the rest of the game. Then they beat the host team, Austin P, 4-2 later that day. SLU rallied from a 2-0 deficit with a 4-run 5th inning. Jocelyn Abbott singled to drive Abby Mallow home, and then with 2 on, Cammie Newbanks homered. Isabel Royal pitched all 7 innings and struck out 9. On Saturday the 2nd, they beat Ohio 1-0. SLU got only 1 hit in the entire game, but they really made it count. Natalie Sullivan was on base after being hit by a pitch, and then she stole second. Cammie Newbanks stepped up to the plate and drove her home with a single.
That's just manufacturing runs. Like the 80s Cardinals.
Beautiful stuff. It's like 80s Cardinals playoff baseball. Just love to see it. Taylor Hockman got the complete game shutout. She struck out 2, gave up 4 hits, and walked 2. Zach, why don't you take us through these last 2 games on Sunday the 3rd?
Yeah, a 3-2 loss against Uwe Pui. I thought they dropped Purdue.
They are about to. I think they're phasing it out, so they haven't done it yet.
The Billikens led 2-0 after 4 innings, thanks to 2 solo shots from Abby Mallow. IUPUI got 3 in the top of the 5th. That's all they need. The first was an RBI single with 2 on. A couple batters later, they scored on a bases loaded walk. The 3rd run was a sac fly. Sounds like lawyer ball to me, Pete. Lily Strand started and took all 3 earned runs. Isabel Royal came in relief during the 5th and did not allow any more runs once they got out of that inning. A 2-1 win to close out the weekend versus Austin P on Sunday the 3rd. AP scored first on a ground out in the 4th, but SLU took the lead for good 2 innings later when Allie Marietta got a 2-run single to send Cammie Newbanks and Natalie Sullivan home. Hockman pitched another gem, going all 7 innings, striking out 5. SLU will host St. Thomas for its 3-game home opening series on March 9th and 10th. Pete, we may have to do tennis a little dirty here because we are sitting at a cool 2 hours and 10 minutes. Give us the meat and potatoes here.
Yeah, so a weird thing on the schedule. They list Northern Kentucky, both men and women, for Saturday the 2nd, but there's no result, no recap. And when you go to NKU's website, SLU's not even on the schedule, and both teams played at Southern Indiana. So I don't know what.
Well, the Norse are a myth.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. I didn't think of that. So okay, all right. Well, moving on from those fake Vikings.
Yes.
The men won 6-1 at Lindenwood on Tuesday the 27th. Ryoto Fukushima lost in the 1 spot, but they cleaned up after that. Everybody else claimed victories. And then on Friday the 1st, they won 4-3 against Oral Roberts. SLU led 3-0. Oral Roberts won 3 straight single matches to tie it. And then Declan Townsend won a 3-set match to seal the overall win. Clutch. Next up for the men, they kick off the conference slate by hosting Davidson on Friday the 8th and Dayton on Sunday the 10th, both at St. Clair Tennis Club. And then on the women's side, they swept Lindenwood 7-0 on Wednesday the 28th. Everybody won. So just a great performance there. But notably, I will call out one player. Emerson White moved up to the number 3 spot. She'd been playing number 6 singles before that, and she was named A10 Rookie of the Week. Won this match 6-0, 6-1. So SLU might really have a gem in this freshman. Next up for the women, they're at Kansas City on Monday the 4th, and then at Western Illinois on Wednesday the 6th, Zach, and that wraps up tennis.
And that wraps it up for us. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed that segment with the real Arch Baron Cup historian Eric Pitlyk. Go Bills.
Go Bills.